right. Welcome to A Simple Life Live. So today we are going to start some fig trees. And I have a bunch of cuttings right here. We also have a bunch of acorns off of our big old oak trees right here. And we are going to start some oak trees as well. But for right now, Clint is actually currently taking some of our tree bags, tree containers, and he's filling them up about, well, everything except for the top 2 inches, basically. So he's given me about 2 inches at the top. And this is a mixture that we mixed up specifically for doing trees. And I'll show you what it is, and I'll show you kind of the contents. And yeah, so, but what a beautiful morning here it is in Oregon. I'm always blown away when we get these absolutely lovely mornings in Oregon. And of course, it's a lovely morning in Oregon. Yes. Oh, perfect. I'm glad I'm nice and clear. All right. So what I have Clint doing is we made this nice mixture of coconut coir, compost, and potting soil up. And I'll show you what each one of those are and kind of what their consistencies are. So this is our compost. Because it comes from horse manure, it has a little bit more of wood chippiness to it. Very small, like wood shavings. That's actually what it should be called. It's like wood shavings. So it's got a little bit more fluffiness to it than your average compost that's very dense because, well, the wood shavings take a little bit longer to break down. And the next thing up is the coconut coir. And the coconut coir is coconut coir. And it's very light and fluffy, but it holds a ton of water. And so it's really good for helping to keep the moisture and everything locked in. Good morning, yay! Hey guys, from Indiana. Well, yes, it's good afternoon for you, yes. And it's very early morning for you in Hawaii. I'm so glad you were able to make it. So, oh, Clay, come help, buddy. So Clay's here helping me as well. I got Clint and Clay. They're both gonna help me fill these pots up. And so you guys are gonna try to go about 2 inches from the top, okay? See that? About 2 inches from the top. Just jump in over there, buddy. You're not gonna do anything bad. And here you guys go. Pot up. All right. I do have my helpers with me today. Clay's over there and Clint's over here with the hat on.
Hi.
And I know you guys know them from the videos, but figured I'd introduce them. And then the last thing I have is an organic potting soil. And it wasn't as expensive as I thought, but I definitely wanted to go with organic because this is gonna end up going into our ground. And while it's certified organic, I don't know exactly what that means. I don't think any of us really do. But that being said, at least they're trying, I guess. We'll go with that. And so yeah, so basically it's just a good potting soil. I'm really happy with this mix. I wasn't sure. I've never used these guys before. So we'll see how everything goes. If you guys pull them off the bottom, it's easier. Just like that. There you go. All right, so how are we gonna do our figs? Well, the figs are actually, the fig plants or the fig starts are actually quite easy to do. You just need a fig cutting. I would say probably after you get your main harvest of figs, if you're gonna do figs yourself. And so, I'm gonna move this over just so I can see if you guys have any comments. So what you wanna do is you wanna take all the leaves off all the way up until the last bud, but you don't wanna nick or hurt that last little bud that's on there. Okay, so for us, we only get one fig crop a year. So any figs that are currently on any of these will never ripen. They'll fall off and just sit on the ground. So you want to take them down to something like this. Now this one's obviously fairly crooked, but hey, fig trees always have a little bit of artsiness to them. And then I'm gonna actually use my grafting knife just because it's really sharp for the next kind of bit. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this on a 45-degree angle like this, okay? And that's just gonna expose that bit. And then I'm going to take down, kind of scrape off the bark on the bottom of this, just for maybe an inch or two, inch and a half or two, something like that. And so that's prepped, that's ready to go. And so I'm gonna do that to a bunch of these. I'll show you, some of these are newer wood. This is obviously had multiple years of growth added to it. But I have stuff that's really new. Let me grab one that's newer. Okay, here you go. So this right here, these were all cut yesterday, by the way, so they're really fresh. So this is almost all first year growth. This is going to be like everything I do, a little bit of an experiment, because I was unable to find doing this method if it was better to use first year, second year growth, older growth. Couldn't tell. Nobody really stated. So we're going to do a little bit of experiment and try some older stuff and some younger stuff. And there's also a method that Herman uses for doing his fig starts, which has nothing to do with any of this. So we're going to do the same thing. We want about a foot of tree. We're going to cut it at a 45. We're going to take off our leaves and our fruit like this without nicking that top little start. And then we're going to do the same thing down here where we're going to just take off a little bit of that bark. Okay, just like that. And then this is ready to go. And I'll actually show you what these are going to look like. Now this has all been wetted down. So this is very moist. Not only was the topsoil moist, but the coconut core I soaked and got very wet. And by the way, if you're going to do this and you're going to buy coconut core, it's going to come dry and you're going to have to soak it before you want to put it in your potting soil. My wife told me that. She said, hey, you better soak it first or it's going to soak up all your moisture. So thank you for the wisdom, Christine. So we're going to take a stick that's about the width of a finger or so. We're going to kind of make a hole in here and stick it straight in. And then we're going to just take our fig, we're going to push it right in like that. Give it a little compacting around that. And you guys actually want to go all the way to the top. I just realized this is going to compress more than we need. So let's go all the way to the top. Okay, boys? And then we're just going to compress it down around here. The next step is, and I'm going to jump through these steps and I'll go through them a few more times, is to take some plastic. This is recycled, or it's not recycled, I'm recycling it, from the greenhouse. And so we're just going to take this, and before we do that, we need to get a little stick that goes in here. But I'll just show you the method before I get the little stick. And I'm using, farmer's twine, baling twine, and I'm just going to wrap it around, and I'm going to tie it off. Now this stuff is actually stiff enough, I could probably get away without using a stick in there, but I'll show you what it looks like when you do slightly less structural plastic that doesn't have the same structure to it. I'll show you what that looks like. Because Christine started some figs about 2 weeks ago, and this is a really special fig cutting because Christine's family's out on the East Coast, and her uncle passed away earlier this year. And in front of his house was a fig tree, and all of us ate from it, and including the neighbors, which I think was an ongoing joke that he didn't want anybody eating his figs. But every couple of years, he would go in and he'd cut the thing all the way to the ground. Now, Uncle Nick was not a gardener per se. He was a plumber. And there's actually some viral videos of him out on the internet somewhere of doing some pretty funny stuff as he got older. But we won't go there. And so these were cuttings off of that fig tree. Christine got them when she was out there about 3 weeks ago. She brought them back. So we did this method so that way we could have Uncle Nick's figs here in Oregon. And so she did this, and what she did was she covered it with just a typical, I would say like almost like a sandwich bag, a snack or sandwich bag. I think it's about a half gallon. She just put it over like this with a rubber band. Now this plastic is not very structural compared to the stuff that we're going to be using, which is greenhouse plastic. So we could probably get away without having to put the little stick in. That being said, we'll still put a little stick in. Now, these have been in here for about 2 weeks, so the plastic can come off. I'm very tempted to pull this out and show you the roots, but I'm not going to because we only have 2 cuttings off of Uncle Nick's fig trees. So I'm going to make sure that they have the best chance they can to make it. So after about 2 weeks of having the plastic on, and that really helps lock in the moisture and create a little bit of like a greenhouse effect, you can take these off. Now, most of these figs that we're going to have started, we're going to put them in our greenhouse over winter. But it's not going to be heated. It's not going to be really set up for keeping a lot of heat in. It'll keep the temperature a couple degrees hotter than it is, or warmer than it is outside. So it just is going to mean that these aren't going to, that's just going to mean these aren't going to get frozen over the course of winter if we get a really nasty frost, because while these aren't planted, they're going to be more susceptible to being frozen if we get a really nasty frost and they were just sitting out here, which is actually where we're going to be planting all our figs. So let's get a couple more of these done. I'll show you the process a few more times. All right, so just going to cut them off on a 45 like I was saying, and then we will take some of that bark off with the side of the grafting knife. And then we have another one, so we'll do a few of these, and then we'll get some started. We'll put them in the pots, and then we'll move on to the oaks, because the doing the oaks is also a slightly different process. And oak trees are really interesting because when you start an oak tree from a seed or you buy one, they don't do a lot for a long time. Matter of fact, usually for the first couple years, you'll see very little, if any, growth that comes out of the ground. Matter of fact, I've planted them, and it's taken 3 or 4 years before I saw really anything that was even tall enough to make me think that the oak tree had taken off. Oak trees typically dump all their energy into the root system long before they start putting any energy into the actual, what we would consider the tree. And that's kind of funny because the healthy part, the part of the tree that actually does all the work, is underground. All right, get this set up. We'll do a couple more of these. And that's probably enough right there, boys, for right now. We're gonna do all 50 pots today, but we don't have to do them right now. All right, we've got 3 ready. Use our little stick. Put this in, and then we're gonna pack around it. Get it nice and secure. The idea is to make sure that we get that moisture pushed up against the cutting. All right. All right, so oak acorns, I should say, the acorns are interesting because how do you know which acorns are good? Does anybody know how to do that? There's a little bit of a hint already hit here. I'll wait a minute because I know chat's a little bit behind. I know my boys know how to do it because I told them the other day, so you guys aren't allowed to say anything.
Okay.
All right, well, I'll have to tell you because... All right, so the way that you test whether or not you have good acorns, and the boys have been collecting these for me for the last, I guess it's probably about on and off for about a week. Let me put those back right there. Is you take a jug of water and you pour them in. And if they sink, they're good. I think it's the same way with boys. You just take all the boys, you throw them in a lake, and if they sink, they're a good boy, and if they float, well, you're in trouble. Is that right?
Yeah.
No? Okay. All right, so everything that's floating here is telling me that none of those are viable acorns. And with acorns, you actually want to plant a lot more than you want because not everything is actually going to take off. So you don't. It's not like other things where you're almost guaranteed for it to be healthy and to actually grow. Acorns are very much one of those, you know, one of those things that when you start, you're going to end up with a very low number that actually become a tree. How do I know that? Well, because we don't have a whole lot of oak trees around here, but we have a lot of acorns on the ground. Now, squirrels will definitely affect that a little, but the other thing is I looked it up, and that's how I actually know. That and the fact that there's just not a lot of oak trees around here with some really big oaks. Now, part of the reason for there not being as many oak trees around here is Herman got them all. Herman removed them all. Now, the way that Herman removed them all is no longer available to us as farmers. He used TNT, and so he removed them with material that I'm not allowed to buy, and I'm going to be careful saying the actual name of on the stream. But yeah, so that's actually what he did. He removed them using boomsticks. There you go. And so he did that, and actually every time I need to remove a tree, he always tells me, oh, you just need to go get some. I'm like, Herman, there is no way that I can actually use TNT the way that you did 30, 40 years ago. It's just not viable to me. So that's one of the reasons why there's not as many oaks up here, is because everywhere there were oaks was kind of the flatter area, and so Herman removed them all for apple trees and for gardens and for prunes and for vineyards. And the farmer before him did a lot of that as well. So here you go. These are all our viable acorns right here. So why don't you boys go over there and get those green pots. There's a bunch of green pots, and we're going to use the green pots for these, okay? All right. So, yep, those ones. We need about 15 or 20 of them. So now that we have these, we know which ones are good. I'm going to get the boys. They're actually going to fill some of these. We have these little starter pots, and they're for plants, but they're going to be perfect for this, because all we're going to do is we're going to get these started, okay, in these smaller pots. And once we figure out which ones are actually going to seed or sprouting, which ones are sprouting, we're going to take those and I'll get right to that. I see your question there. Yeah, one moment. Yeah, so we're going to just see which ones sprout. Once we know which ones are sprouting and we start getting some roots developed, we're going to move them into bigger pots because we actually don't want them up here. We're going to actually take most of these oaks that we're going to start, and we're actually going to be putting them in our pasture down at our place in the pig area, as well as some along the streams in the cow area, not right against the stream, but in a vicinity of the stream, so they're able to get a little bit more of that moisture because our fields, until we get a good cover crop built up down there, our fields can dry out pretty drastically in the summer. So why don't you guys take some of these and just get them about topped off. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll get to planting the oaks. So the question is, did you say something about planting fig trees, small trees in the fall? I have 2 in 20-gallon buckets that need to be planted. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, because I didn't actually go over kind of how we're gonna plant these. These are gonna stay in these containers and kind of build up their root system and everything all the way until the spring. Now, each zone is different. We're in 8A, but we're also not in a, we are in a kind of a unique 8A. And whenever somebody says, oh, what zone are you in? Well, we're in 8A, but we're in like a, you know, this is literally like a rainforest. You know, I mean, we get 40 some inches of rain from about November to June, somewhere in that. It can vary from October to May, or however it ends up being. And so we end up getting a lot of rain during that period. But then once we get through our rain season, we very rarely get much rain in the summer. We may get, I mean, I'm going to be generous and say an inch of rain during the summer, and that's probably pretty generous of me stating that, because it's probably a lot less. There's been summers that we haven't seen anything until the rains come in, you know, October, November. But there's been other times that Herman's told me it started in August and hasn't let up all the way until June. So For you planting them, it depends on where you're at. If they're in 20-gallon containers, you're probably going to be a lot better off. You know, they're going to be pretty established. I would wait until, depending on what zone you're in, I'd wait until right after you get your last frost. Whenever your last frost is, I'd wait a couple weeks after that. Let the ground get a little bit softer, depending on how much frost or how frozen the ground is. And I'd put them in spring. That's what I would do. The 20-gallon buckets, I mean, that's a big root ball. So if you have that big of a root ball, I would consider, excuse me, I'd consider maybe hiring somebody to come in with like an auger or something like that, or paying somebody if you're unable to dig a big hole. There's a theory that if you're really going to plant a tree, that you want the hole to be like 2 to 4 times the size of your root ball. And so you can kind of, when I say 2 to 4 times, it depends on who you talk to. I've heard double, I've heard up to 4 times. That's really going to be what you want to do. It depends on your soil too. If you have really good soil, like, you know, here, if this soil is amazing. This really has never had anything really done to it. It's never really been tilled much. Hasn't really had anything. Matter of fact, when I was putting in the terrace behind me, I had like 3 feet of topsoil before I hit anything that was not topsoil. I mean, it was just light, fluffy, and beautiful. Something like that, I would probably just dig it the same size as the root ball, because as long as it's not compacted, it's going to be really great soil just for it to take off in. If it's, you know, maybe like one of our pastures, I'd probably go 2 times as big, but I would bring my excavator down for a 20-gallon, you know, bucket. I mean, 20-gallon bucket, we're talking, you know, that's a pretty good size root ball. So I'd probably bring my excavator and just take a couple big scoops out. I doubt you have an excavator. In that case, get your son-in-law to do it. Give him a sandwich and a soda. No, I would definitely get a, do a pretty good size hole, especially since figs, their root system is really their, I mean, it's like any tree, but the root system very much keeps them going. That's why you can cut them all the way down to the ground and they just come right back. Matter of fact, I had one I tore out. I tore out and I didn't even know it was a fig tree there. Herman goes, "You tore out the fig tree." I said, "I didn't even see a fig tree. Where was the fig tree?" Well, it was growing right up in between a couple prune starts or plum starts or saplings. So when I tore those out, the fig tree was all the way up and had gotten so tall, I couldn't even see the leaves, and it must have been like 30 feet tall. It was just thin branches, and so I ripped it out. I didn't even know it. Well, it turns out that it just came right back. And so when I say that for fig trees, their root system really is like the life of the tree. It really is. That's why you can cut them back and just drastically you know, destroy them, and they just keep coming back. Maybe that's why in the Bible there's that proverb about the fig tree not producing fruit. Can't remember the exact thing, but I know there's something. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our acorns. They've been soaking in a little bit of water. These have also just freshly fallen off, so we're going to take a few of those and just drop them in here, and then we're going to do the same thing with the plastic. We're going to cover these in plastic just to kind of lock in some of this moisture. So here you guys, boys. Each of you can take one of these, put it over the top, and do that, okay? Mm-hmm. And tie it off with a string. And why don't you put that, you can put we do this right here, okay? Mm-hmm. There you go, right here, Clay. All right, Clay, scoot over, buddy. All right, and get you one. You want to push the hole in, buddy? Yeah. All right, you push the hole in. Okay, and drop your little acorn in. Go all the way down. Yep, there you go. Cover it up. And then here's a piece of plastic. And,
Can I do one?
Yep. All right. So there's a piece of plastic, and here's some twine. Okay, take it over there. Oh, there you go. There you go.
What type of knot do we do?
Whatever you just tie it off however you feel you want to. All right, we'll get some more of these figs done. And I should talk about the variety of fig I have. The variety of fig I have here. So this is a Desert King fig. Now, I actually don't think this is the most beautiful fig. It is a very good tasting fig, but it's not the most beautiful fig. There's some other ones that I actually would like to get in, but I want to do some tests before I start doing anything with the other varieties. And what do I mean by test? I want to see kind of how they handle up here. I have a friend of mine, Drago, is Herman's friend as well, who lives down in the valley. He's about 650 feet below us. He doesn't like the Desert King. He likes another variety. And I cannot remember the variety's name. There's a lot of varieties of figs. And so I saw the variety, and the fruit is absolutely beautiful. Beautiful, red, delicious looking fruit. But I'm not sure if it'll take off up here, because he also has the, the variety called Brown Turkey. And the Brown Turkey variety that we have up here, it doesn't ripen before we get our August kind of drought heat wave. And so because it doesn't ripen before then, we end up getting a really weird ripening that happens. And what I mean by a weird ripening that happens is when we have that dryness, it kind of almost, I always call it like heat ripening. It heat ripens the fruit. The fruit looks like it's ready, it feels like it's ready, you taste it, and it doesn't have any sugars in it. So because of where we are right here, altitude-wise, sun coverage-wise, heat-wise, moisture-wise, all of that, I try to pay attention as much as I can to how the fruit handles the season that we have currently. Now, obviously, I can only do that each year one time. So I really have to kind of pay attention. And what I've seen over the last couple years is that certain varieties never really get truly ripe. And they look ripe, but you taste them and they don't have the sugar content to be actually palatable. They just kind of taste off. The Desert King, while it's not the most beautiful inside, it's kind of brownish red. They kind of, when they really are ripe, they're kind of not that beautiful of a fruit, but they taste delicious. And they ripen, and we usually get almost all the fruit ripe right at the end of July, beginning of August. So it's right as that heat really starts setting in, and we still have a good amount of moisture in the ground. So they're able to pull that moisture in, really get juicy and yummy, and the sugars taste delicious. And then we end up eating them. So I'm gonna stick with Desert King because they do good up here. The other varieties, there's about 5 or so other varieties in here that I've seen. There's one other variety, I do not know the name of it. It ripens at the exact same time as a Desert King, but it's whitish yellow on the inside, and it tastes a lot like honey. It's very delicious. Excuse me, let me get a drink. It's very delicious, but it ends up, it doesn't put on as many figs. So the Desert King is kind of what we're kind of going to be working with up here. And then obviously Uncle Nick's random fig tree that he had in Philadelphia. That's actually, I'm probably going to go down to our farm. I'm sure Christine can chime in and tell me if that's what her plans are. I think that's what her plans are. So far down at our farm, we haven't had a great experience with figs. We had 3 Desert King down there, and they just didn't do very well. We never really could get them established enough. But that may have also been because they were in an area that, well, there's 2 things weird about this area. One thing is there's springs underneath the soil, so like apples, pears, and the Italian prunes did amazing, but the figs didn't seem too good. The other thing that's in this area is we have lots of critters. And what I mean by critters is like voles and moles, field mice, but now, that was a couple years ago, now we have some barn cats that have did an amazing job of kind of taking care of that population. So we may have better luck, I'm gonna call it better luck, but just a better setup for doing figs down at our home farm. But I'll have to talk to Christine about those because she did 2 of them. And here's the other one. And they are doing really good. She put a little stick in to hold that light plastic up, and they're doing really good. She's had them for, now that, I guess this is probably about 12 days or so that they've been in these containers like this. So I'm gonna make sure I put those to the side because if I mix them up, Christine won't be too happy with me. I can guarantee you that. I probably won't get any cookies with my after dinner. I'm saying that joking because Christine makes really good cookies.
The string. We got no.
Oh, we have no more string. That's okay. There's a whole roll of it right there. Go down there. You guys have pocket knives. All right. Wow, look at you boys go. So the boys have gotten these oaks started, and we're doing the same type of method where we're creating that like mini greenhouse just to kind of get these the acorns to actually sprout. And then we're gonna see how many go. I'm gonna have them do probably about 20 or so. Oh, never mind. They have them all over here. There's a whole line of them. So I guess they're gonna be doing about 25 or so. And then the figs, we're gonna do all these. There's probably about 50 of them all together. So I'm gonna wrap it up because we've been going for about 30 minutes. If you guys have any questions or comments, or you want to know my favorite cookie, it's a chocolate chip cookie. And Christine makes it when I beg her to. And now I'm gonna give her a hard time because I don't think she's actually in the chat. She was in the chat earlier. All right. What do you guys think? You guys having fun planting
Yes.
little trees?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. Well, we're going to sign off. And I'm not seeing anything pop up in the chat, and it could just be lag. Thank you so much for joining us today on... Oh, she is here. Oh, Christine, she is here. Okay. Oatmeal raisin for me. Oh, oatmeal raisin's a good one. And you know what? Christine does a good oatmeal raisin. They need a raise? Oh. Yeah, well, we could tie them to the top of a tree. That would be the only raise they're getting around here. Is just slightly higher. Andrea Aarons says that you need a raise.
What do you mean by a raise?
I think they say I should pay you more. But the only raise you're going to get is tied to the top of a tree.
Ooh, zip lining.
Oh, no, I'm not putting a zip line in. Yeah, oatmeal raisin is really good. I do love an oatmeal raisin. Christine makes a really good one. But Christine has this recipe that she got from my mom. Oh, peanut butter. Okay. So here's the deal. I'm gonna spill the beans on my favorite cookie ever. And Christine Peterson, who's in the chat, is my wife, by the way, if you didn't know that. When we were first married, we lived in Baltimore. And when we lived in Baltimore, Christine, well, I had this idea for cookies, and Christine would always send me to work with cookies, and everybody loved the cookies. And so I asked her, I'm like, is there any way that you could take, because she also made these great peanut butter cookies, really good creamy peanut butter cookies. And I go, is there any way that you could take an Oreo cookie and put it inside the peanut butter cookie? And she did it. She literally would take an Oreo cookie, put it inside the peanut butter cookie, and then bake it. Yeah. Very, very good. So, the next thing we did is, could you take like a dark chocolate kind of cookie and put a Oreo cookie inside of that? So we did this a few times, and I will say the absolute best cookie by far is the peanut butter cookie with the Oreo cookie baked on the inside. I'm not a huge fan of Oreo cookies because they're processed, but you could get a better substitute for that. But they are absolutely delicious. And since we had children, she has never made them again. So I'm trying to figure out if I have to get rid of all the children to get my peanut butter Oreo cookies again, or if I just have to beg during a live stream. That being said, they take a really long time, and so I totally understand why she doesn't make them. But that is actually my favorite cookie. Sorry, folks, we totally went on a cookie rant, and we were supposed to be planting figs. Christine will be making fig Newtons before long. Oh, yes, I'm sure she will be making fig Newtons. It seems like I may be getting those those peanut butter filled cookies with Oreos sooner rather than later. I just have to do a live stream about it. This is amazing. I think I'm gonna do more live streaming. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'll get to them as soon as I can, which is usually within about an hour or so. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have a better idea of how to do some of this. Oh, I didn't tell you how Herman did his fig trees. I mentioned I was going to tell you how Herman did his fig trees. So how he did his own starts. I'll share that right now before everybody gets off. So Herman would take a large branch, okay, a fig branch that has gotten too long, and he bends it and he puts it on the ground, and then he puts some soil over it and he puts a brick on top of it, and then he just leaves it, and he does that in the fall. And then once you get into spring and everything starts sprouting, he comes in and he cuts it off, okay, on the side that's on the out of the dirt, but on this side of the brick, if the brick was right here, cuts it off, he digs it up, and he plants it because it has all the roots that have sprouted over winter. And that's how he does it. It's amazing. I could do that as well. The problem for me, that process, while it works probably amazing for him, I would like to know how many plants I have and how many are good and how many aren't, as well as I really don't want to have to go around and put bricks on top of branches and stuff like that. It's a really good method if you're not going to do what I'm doing here. And if you're just kind of relaxed about the whole process, I think it's definitely a great method. And he's used it all over the place. He's done that he does it with grapes too. He'll take marionberries. He'll take the end of a marionberry plant and just shove it in the ground, and then he comes back the next spring and it's got its own little root ball and everything. He cuts it off about 2 feet up and puts the whole entire thing in a pot, and he's got another marionberry or another grape or another fig. You remember doing that with some plants here? Yeah. It's not an unheard of process at all. It's just I think it's much better in a personal garden, not where you're trying to do 50 of them or something along those lines. I think if we just had if this was just, we were just starting a couple extra, I think I'd do that process. But in this case where, we're trying to do 50 to kind of fill this whole hillside with fig trees, I think that's the idea. And I'm doing 50 because I'm not sure how many are going to take. We could end up with 25. I doubt it. I think we'll probably end up with pretty much 50. Pretty close from what I've heard. This process is really good. But yes, that is the method I was referring to earlier that Herman used, was to just put the part of the tree into the ground and let the roots take over. And it's similar to some other methods where people will put some coconut coir or peat moss around a section after taking the bark down to the cambium layer, and then put tin foil around that and kind of let it sit, and the roots will start, come back a couple weeks later, and you can cut it off. I think maybe it's a month later. Yeah, so there's definitely different methods. This is just a method that I figured was the cleanest. Also, our trees are already starting to go dormant, so while I've gone through and have removed these branches, nothing's really bleeding. We got a little bit of bleeding on these figs right around the little figs that we're taking out, the little figs I'm cutting off. I'll get a little bit of bleeding, but none of the branches or the leaves when I nip them off are bleeding. So, and the bottom is not bleeding as well. So this seems to be a perfect time of year to do this, and it's after the fruit, the first real crop, the only crop we get after that crop is already been harvested or fallen off. All right, well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us and being here with me. And thank you, boys, for your help.
You're welcome.
They will get a raise. I'll tie them to the top of a tree, like I said, and somebody will have to come get them down. And I think I'm going to get some peanut butter cookies soon. All right. Why did you pick the location for the figs? Oh, yeah. So the reason I picked the location, I've talked about this a little bit in the past, was because these figs did so good here. All the figs that Herman had done so good, and there's other spots on the property where the figs did not do as well. And so what I realized is there's a couple different reasons for the figs not doing as well in the other areas. One thing is I think the moisture levels, I think rodent pressure, and I think they also just dried out in the summer. We get a really prolonged hot spell from about mid-July all the way through to till probably mid-September. And it's hot, on and off, very dry. Sometimes we even get the like Santa Ana winds, these winds that come through and they just dry everything out, just bone dry. And I think those figs that are facing more of the morning sun, they just get heated up and they just dry out. And so there's a whole row of them. There was actually 2 rows of them, and they just never really did very good. So these have done really good on the west side of the property and kind of shaded out by these oaks. They've just done really, really good. So if they're doing good right there, then that's why we're putting them here. I just, you know, when things do good and they don't get any water, none of them have ever been watered, or not any real substance of, like any very large quantity of water, other than, you know, what's coming off from doing apple pressings or what, you know, when a hose runs a little bit longer, but they're not getting irrigated. And they've done great. And you can see, I mean, they've done really good. They're green, and we're at the end of our season. Right now, everything else is, you know, starting to lose leaves and turn yellow. And some of that's drought, some of it's we're getting into fall. But overall, the figs are doing great. So that's why this is the location that we're going to do them. Also, you come up the driveway, and I have to say, having some nice, beautiful figs meet you as you drive up a driveway, yeah, I think that's definitely an appetizing way to enter our farm, is to see fig trees, especially during summer when the figs are ripe. We may have a traffic jam. So, all right, well, thank you guys for joining us. Unless anybody has any other questions, and I'll give it a minute because I know we have a little bit of a lag, we are going to sign off. The boys have done a splendid job of doing these. I think they got almost all of them done. They got 4 or 5 left of the acorns that need to be planted, and then we'll get to the rest of the figs, which obviously I have a whole bucket worth here. All right, well, thank you guys for joining us. Oh, hey, Arcs and Sparks Welding. Thanks for swinging by. I may have to ask you some questions about welding because I've been having some issues. Not with MIG, but with some TIG welding. Just aluminum, man. Harder than MIG welding, that's for sure, and harder than steel. So I may have to reach out. All right, well, hey guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a great day, and we'll see you hopefully next weekend. I'm hoping to try to do a live stream every weekend on Saturday, as long as they kind of work out and the weather permits, and I have some good topics to talk about. I think it's really enjoyable, and yeah, it's always great to have a little community of folks that love hanging out. All right, have a good one. And I'll definitely reach out to you,